Welcome to the Red State Weekly Briefing. I'm your host, Aaron Gardner. Each week, we at the Red State Weekly Briefing are going to bring you the best highlights from not only Red State, but from across the conservative blogosphere. Our show will cover a variety of news topics that matter from the week to conservative activists. Our format is going to be similar to Fox News Sunday. We're going to have a panel that comes on, but unlike them, we're going to have a little bit more comedic flair and a little bit more attribution for bloggers. Along with me this week is my co-host, Caleb Howe. Caleb, say hi.
No.
Also with us,
I don't take commands.
Also with us is our engineer and co-host as well, Thomas LeDuc. Thomas from the Right Radio, FTR Radio.
Good afternoon.
And with us on our premier inaugural Red State Weekly Briefing, we have a very special guest with us, Rafi Williams, the Deputy Press Secretary from the GOP. Woo! Everybody clap for Rafi. All right, so we're going to get into a couple things this week. We're going to be talking about Mark Udall. We're going to be talking about the RNC chair, actually. We're going to be talking about the DNC chair. And we're going to be talking about the Vox boys, the Juice Vox Media guys, and their liberal equivalent to climate change. It's going to be a great show, and then at the end we're going to have a couple questions for Rafi that are going to be rapid fire, and hopefully he came prepared because we're going to squeeze him. We're going to squeeze him real hard. It's going to be intense. You're going to see. So let me go ahead and jump right into this. We're going to start off with Mark Udall's very, very, very bad, no good week. It wasn't a good week for incumbent Senator Mark Udall. He starting last Friday, there was quite a bit of stuff that started coming out. Whether it was, I wrote a post about this, and then I said whether it was news about his PAC giving money to his campaign, a CNN analyst predicting his loss, new polling showing that the race is essentially tied and he has multiple vulnerabilities, or the change in the race ranking that just happened on Friday, changing it from a leans Dem to a toss-up race. It's really.
Also, I heard that he ordered a decaf at Starbucks and they gave him full calf.
Well, yeah, there is that.
Bad week.
And there's other things that are going on this week. With Mark Udall, he was actually on a tour this week of Colorado, his True Colorado tour, where he's going around reassuring voters that he truly represents them, which is an interesting thing considering the polling that came out this week. One of the things I want to point out in the polling that came out this week is with voters on some of these issues, he's on the wrong side of 60%, which is nowhere that an incumbent senator wants to be going into a race for re-election, especially when he's been polling below 50% overall throughout this election cycle. But let me back up a little bit, and Rafi, I want to bring you in on this. It's an interesting thing that the first thing that I have in this post, and it's from last Friday actually, is that Udall has reorganized an old PAC with three other struggling Senate campaigns. Senator Kay Hagan and her campaign, Representative Gary Peters in Michigan in her campaign, and Hagan is North Carolina, of course, and then Representative Bruce Braley in Iowa. They've all come together, and they've been using this PAC of Mark Udall's to fund themselves, basically, and they're using money from people like Hume Steyer, who's the older brother of billionaire environmentalist Tom Steyer, who we've heard a lot about this week, and Chris Hughes, the publisher of the New Republic magazine. Mark Udall himself, he gave his own campaign $40,300 from this PAC. So, Rafi, I want to bring you in. What do you think about these different campaigns who are creating PACs and aligning with other senators to kind of back each other up and taking money from these big environmental donors while they are decrying people like the Koch brothers who are on the other side of the environmental argument?
Well, I think here you have to see it as this is them selling out, right? Each one of them is saying, I stand for my constituents, I stand for my state, I'm going to stand up strong for them. But in fact, they're powerless when it comes to getting any kind of legislation or rules given that govern their state. I mean, look at Keystone, for instance, it's a huge deal, and it means a lot to their constituents because it's work, it's shovel-ready jobs, and it's proving that they're not for job creation. And so by coming together, they're proving that, in fact, they don't stand for their state, they stand for the Democratic Party and Barack Obama. And so I think it dispels doom for them because it shows they align more closely with Obama than with their own constituents and their own citizens.
Right, I think you're absolutely right there, and we should note as well that Mark Udall failed to sign on to the letter in support of Keystone XL pipeline going forward. So it is important here, especially here in Colorado. We do have a fracking industry or hydraulic fracturing industry for natural gas, and we do have a big environmental push to ban fracking here. And it's actually been a division within the Democratic Party here in Colorado. And it actually could open up some avenues for Republicans here. But also, I want to talk a little bit more about this PAC that they put together. It's also interesting that they've used this PAC along with help from Harry Reid to actually create a website called Stop the Koch Brothers, which was made for a liberal fundraising group Act Blue. So their hypocrisy really knows no bounds on this issue of using, high-dollar donors to come in and influence their party and influence be the ideological compass, basically, of the Democratic Party. Caleb, do you want to interject anything in here?
I just think it's hilarious. I mean, they ought to put a T on the end of that and call it the Pact because it's got that weird, like, American Pie, this is our last chance sort of, death cult pact that they've got going here. I mean, 3 struggling campaigns is such a kind way to put it for people like Brawley, who has basically gone and set fire to all the farms in the Midwest, rhetorically speaking, of course, making him a political domestic terrorist. And it's just shocking to me that they go out there with straight faces and act like fear-mongering about the Kochs is somehow a noble undertaking. It's the way Harry Reid gets up in front of the floor and he's speaking for the people against the powered and moneyed interests in America, and then they turn right around and they take money from these guys and use it to create PACs that are designed to make fun of people who take money from guys.
Well, and remember, too, this is the same Harry Reid who sold the Senate floor to Tom Steyer to do his all-night climate talk-a-thon. I mean, it's rank hypocrisy here. I mean, Steyer basically bought the Keystone Pipeline delay from Obama with this, promise of $100 million. That's the problem I have here, is that they're taking this money and railing against other rich people when they are literally selling the government to them. I mean, you don't see Republicans selling the government or selling their positions. They are firm in where they stand, and they go through with it. But Democrats are willing to sell it. I mean, they are selling the Senate floor, and they're selling the Keystone Pipeline. It's going to create jobs and hurts Americans.
And this is absolutely shameful. You're absolutely correct. What the Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has done to the Senate is it's going to take years to build up the trust between the Senate and just general people in the United States. Again, I want to walk away from this portion of this post here for a minute, but I will come back to it.
But just remember that if you want to buy the Senate, it is available on eBay.
Right, exactly. They take Bitcoin too, so don't worry. But as the week progressed for Mark Udall, it just kept getting worse. On CNN's State of the Union, Stuart Rothenberg of Rothenberg Political Report, he actually came out and said that he thinks probably Udall loses in Colorado to Cory Gardner in a race that 3 months ago we would have said was off the table. That was his quote. At the Colorado Observer, reporter there, Valerie Richardson, she actually highlighted some of the reasons why Udall has been sliding, and basically what it comes down to is, a lot of it comes back to Obamacare. A lot of it comes back to him kind of being pushy with the insurance agencies here at the state level, and the Obamacare cancellations and how that all played out. That has a lot to do with it. And then also Cory Gardner's jump into the race also had a lot to do with it.
Well, wouldn't you say, Aaron, that sometimes the policies of Democrats sell well in Colorado, but the policies of this current administration are not in line with what Colorado voters are
I
looking
would absolutely say that. I think Colorado voters on the whole are a lot more in the middle on a lot of these issues
I mean, it'll be fun.
Let me take that back. A lot of Colorado independents actually swing very hard against Obamacare. A lot of Colorado independents swing very hard against the idea of a fracking ban. So a lot of Colorado women aren't as enthused as some of us are led to believe. In 2012, Obama only had a +3 with women, and that wasn't actually good compared to the rest of the field. The fact that he managed to slip by was actually due to men still supporting him. Now we're in a point where men are not supporting him at all. Women still support him, and there is still a gender gap, but a lot of that is being overcome. And the war on women rhetoric isn't sticking as well as it used to when they first started this stuff in 2000.
Well, because you can't turn Colorado women into victims.
Well, let me add another one to this. The gun control debate, right? Colorado
That's right.
Strongly against the gun control. I mean, and they thought they were going to win with this argument, and it's just been, I mean, rejected completely. Seats that should be in Dem hands are now in Republican hands because of gun control. So
right.
Absolutely.
They're pushing that just don't match with Colorado.
And not only that, with the gun control, it went so far, and people are seeing now here in Colorado how deceptive they were in this debate. Even the numbers coming back about how many background checks have been done since the law was put in place. The original numbers that came back were totally spun to be one thing, and they weren't actually that thing. It turns out that the number of background checks that happened were much less than what they thought they were going to be, which proves that the issue wasn't even an issue in the first place, and that's what they don't like to see. But moving along with Mark Udall's week, it kept on getting worse for him. It did not get better. By Wednesday, there was blood in the water, and people were seeing it. Americans for Prosperity, they came out with a really strong attack ad, but they blew it. They put in, they used an image that was from a press conference around the Aurora shooting, which, you know, win, lose, or draw, you can't ever use those things, even if you think you can.
I don't really think that our audience requires explanation on why that's inappropriate.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right, yeah, it does. So anyhow, they botched it. But on the other side, we have a different conservative, lesser-known outlet that I've never heard of until recently, called American Commitment, that released a video, a 51-second online ad that is called Colorado Steyer Infection. And it does a great job of hitting Steyer and connecting him to Mark Udall and allowing, you know, making a hit that's equivalent to what the left has tried to do with the Koch brothers. But this is all based on fact. And it actually hits local issues such as water rights and things like that as well that will connect to the rural Colorado and San Luis Valley type of area, which is down in the southern area. So it's a very good video, and we're going to play it here right after we're done talking about this, but and before we go to a break. But I want to note that this is an online ad buy that is worth $40,000, according to the spokespeople from American Commitment, and this was reported by National Journal. So they said there's a little bit of and we're going to break right after we discuss this segment, and we'll come back in on a little bit more. But they say on the National Journal that there's a little bit of, you know, Republicans don't think we should be attacking like this. I haven't really actually experienced that myself. I think this is a brilliant tack to use against them. It shows the hypocrisy of their attacks while also pointing out the reality of them, as you said before, literally buying the Senate and buying legislation. So we got about 2 minutes to discuss that, and then we'll come back after the break and the video.
Let me just point out here that Democrats are notorious for do as I say but not as I do, and I think that what you're seeing with Tom Steyer stuff is he literally, you know, is trying to take away water rights, but then he's he's claiming I'm for the environment. We all should make sacrifices for the environment. But when it comes to him and his actions, he doesn't follow through with his own rhetoric, and it's dangerous, and that's what's gotten America in the situation we're in because Democrats think that they're above the law or don't have to abide by the same rules that all Americans play by, the hardworking Americans that would benefit from things like Keystone.
Absolutely. So Caleb, before I let this
that reminds me of the. Have you guys seen that video going around about the Keystone protesters on the National Mall on Earth Day?
Oh yeah, that was good.
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Somebody needs to take that video and splice it into a campaign ad. That'll be great.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and let this video run, and then we're gonna have some short commercial breaks, and we'll come back on the other side and discuss a little bit more of Mark Udall's bad week, and then we'll wrap up that segment and come in with some other ones. We'll be right back.
California billionaire Tom Steyer is bankrolling Colorado Senator Mark Udall's campaign. Steyer even hosted Udall for a fundraiser in his San Francisco mansion. But Steyer's hurt our state. He tried to make millions by diverting water from southern Colorado. When local residents spoke out, Steyer's partners pushed statewide ballot initiatives to bankrupt local opponents and steal San Luis Valley water. Now Mark Udall is helping Steyer kill the Keystone Pipeline, even though Coloradans strongly support it. Pipeline delay is a victory for Tom Steyer, but a cold slap in the face of American workers. Call Mark Udall. Tell him to put Colorado ahead of his billionaire backer and support the Keystone Pipeline.
Welcome back to the Red State
Oh,
Weekly
Rafi,
Briefing.
that was a filthy joke. Are we back already?
I can't believe you even fit it in there. But anyhow, welcome back to the Red State Weekly Briefing. We're going to jump right back in here. I got a couple more things to discuss on Udall's very bad, no good week. It was a long week for this guy, so let me jump right back in. On the same day that video launched talking about the Steyer infection in Colorado, the Washington Free Beacon actually ran a report talking about how Steyer is deeply involved in a $67 million Ponzi scheme. Now, that's not exactly the guy I would want bankrolling my campaign, but then I'm not a Democrat. So moving on, they have no standards. The last couple things that have happened is the Wall Street Journal noticed dangerous waters that Udall is treading with Obamacare by noting that, according to the Chambers poll, 6 in 10 voters oppose Obamacare and 55% view President Obama unfavorably. These are not issues that he wants to be on the other side of, but yet he is, and he's reconfirmed these again and again. Earlier this month, Mark Udall was asked whether he would have voted for Obamacare again, despite knowing all the flaws, and he said unequivocally that he would. And then on top of that, we have the Quinnipiac poll, which actually shows Cory Gardner one up on Mark Udall. And it also reflects the Obamacare sentiments that we see in the Chamber poll. This is probably making them worry at this point. They're probably pretty freaked out. And this was yesterday. Today, it turns out that all of this that has happened out this week has led up to a big change. The Cook Political Report has shifted this race on Friday afternoon from lean D to a toss-up race. This is huge. This is not where the Colorado Democratic Party expected to be right now. It is where they are, and I don't think the war on women is going to be able to salvage them this time, but we'll have to see. I know Udall and his campaign are probably stressing. Rafi, let me ask you real quick, from an RNC perspective, how does this affect your guys' strategy going in to the cycle full-fledged after the primaries?
We're putting a lot of money in Colorado, a lot of resources on the ground to make sure that we have the capacity to drive voters to the poll, because we realize that this is a huge opportunity for us to win the 6 seats needed to get the Senate back. I mean, the map we have right now, the Senate, is bigger than it ever has been, and it's because of Obamacare and Obama. And the fact is, we're going back to that pact that we were talking about in the last segment, they are so closely tied to Obama, and they're trying to differentiate themselves, but they can't because of everything they've said and they've done for the past 4 or 5 years here, that they are so tied, voting over 90% of the time with Obama or his agenda, that it doesn't allow them to be their own person or to be their own senator, and I think it spells bad news for them. So we're going to keep on hitting them, keep on tying them to Obama, keep on tying them to Reid. We did a Fire Harry Reid ethics complaint this week, and so we're going to keep on pushing that, and so people will know and understand, Americans will see how these senators aren't representing them.
Absolutely. You know, I think we do need to keep the pressure on, and I think it's great that you guys have been so active and engaged this cycle early on in getting out there and fighting back against these vicious lies that we get from people like Harry Reid. I think it's wonderful that you guys are taking action in legal ways to really hold him accountable for what he's doing as a senator. Now, I want to also talk a little bit more about the RNC and praise you guys a little bit more, which honestly, this back when I first started Red State, praising the RNC was not something that we did on a daily basis. But I got to say, you guys and you know, Rebus has definitely turned the corner and really helped us broaden our ability to work together, and I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to note that before we jump to this next segment. Caleb, I want to bring you in real quick and talk to you about what is going on with the RNC and.
Well, I want to say first, Aaron, I didn't like the way that you sort of frowned upon the so-called Ponzi scheme. It is not a Ponzi scheme, and I'll tell you what. If you sign up under me, I promise you, in 6 weeks, with a few family and friends, you can make enough money to work from home full time.
Well, we should work up an email to send out.
All right, I'll get that together.
All right.
No, I put up 2 posts last night. One was about how the RNC chair has denounced remarks made by Cliven Bundy, the rancher in Nevada, who we all know who that is. I'm not going to explain it to you like you don't watch the news. And a separate post about the DNC chair and how she has failed to condemn or distance herself from tweets that were sent by and subsequently deleted by the Twitter account for Pat Quinn out of Illinois, touting an article from the Chicago Sun-Times that essentially the point of which was black conservatives and black Republicans are like Jews who collaborated with Nazis, which to me seems a little outside, the boundaries for political discourse, new tone. And I tried to draw the distinction here. I actually said it's, contrast and compare with the subtitles of the 2 separate articles. But the question is, why is it that when something happens, Cliven Bundy, it's not like the RNC was out there giving speeches from the ranch. It's not like the RNC had representatives out there endorsing Cliven Bundy. It was a largely media-driven and base-driven narrative, people that went out there independently. There were a few local politicians, one in particular, Fiore, I believe her name is pronounced, made a lot of news last week. She is a assemblywoman in Nevada. But overall, it was basically movement folks and independent groups that were out there. Nevertheless, the media immediately pinned and penned articles about how Cliven Bundy is representative of the entire Republican Party, which is it's absurd.
It's kind of like Brian Ross syndrome, where anytime there's a shooting, Brian Ross is looking for a Tea Party connection to it. So it's just this bias that the left has. But the interesting thing to me is that on the other side of this, they never have to call out any of their racists. I mean, they can have sitting senators who were former KKK members. Not just KKK members, but Grand Dragons or whatever the heck they want to call themselves.
Don't pretend like you don't know.
Yeah, right. Like I'm not there every Saturday night, right? I'm white. But anyhow.
But it's just it's a contrast. It's the difference between that. Not only that the expectation that we apologize and the lack of expectation that they do, but that we have the wherewithal. I mean, that there was no problem for. Priebus to get on the air and say, or I guess it was issue a statement online and say, this is obviously a ridiculous and grotesque statement, and we want nothing to do with it.
It drives me crazy. I sit here every day, and we're receiving calls about some random state senator or some random school board member, or who said something off color or rude, and they're like, "Well, what's the RNC statement? Why haven't you denounced him yet? Why haven't you come out against it?" And you're going, "What are you talking about? Why are we responsible for some random guy who we have no control over?" And you give a pass to the Democrats at every turn, from Quinn to Harry Reid's comments about Obama. I mean, remember when Harry Reid called Obama, quote unquote Negro, and then nothing happens compared to now Pat Quinn going against and running against this tweet that insults blacks, Jews, it was done during Passover, and Republicans. I mean, the crux of it is it compares Republicans to the Nazis. That is disgraceful and despicable. The first rule of politics is don't compare anything to Nazis. I mean, that's the third rail of politics. But they do it, and the media goes, man, whatever, it's not a big deal, I don't think it's a story. But if the slightest little lawmaker says something, the whole Republican Party supports this. I mean,
they do it routinely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Great article a month ago, I think, and it was why you see so many headlines that read, Republicans believe X, and it's because random state legislators or random state ANC members or, neighborhood council or whatever, that they then will tar that as all the Republican Party. But when a Democrat does something bad, it says, lawmaker does X, and then the last graph might mention it's Democrat. Might. A lot of these articles don't even mention that, and this is just a liberal bias that we're pushing against every day, and it's why we need Red State and we need bloggers to be out there pushing back against this, because what we see here especially is the grassroots and the blogosphere can create critical mass and force the mainstream media to cover these stories. Just think about how Gosnell took place, and that's exactly what we need, and that's why it's so important to have this
look at
our media landscape.
Look at Yee out in California.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what if? And nobody's supposed to own this guy. He was a elected Democrat, and nobody has to answer for. And he was a gun control elected Democrat, and nobody has to distance themselves or say we condemn this guy's behavior or anything. It's just completely glossed over. CNN didn't cover the story for weeks until people on Twitter finally pressured them into running a story about it. They literally said on Twitter, in response to people saying, why haven't you covered this story? They said, we don't cover local races. We don't cover local officials, which of course was easily disproved. And a simple search of the CNN website showed dozens of hits, not just on local politicians, but on Leland Yee, on positive stories about him. Yep. But they don't run the story about him getting arrested and busted for running guns for the mafia.
Well, we're dealing with a party that is aligned with an industry that has a systemically targets urban black communities for extinction through Planned Parenthood, which was founded by a racist. And yet we're supposed to believe that these people can't be held accountable for their racism and what they do every single day. It's absolutely amazing to me. Now we're gonna have to go ahead and speaking of Gosnell, I did want to say you're absolutely right. The critical mass that came from conservative activists working together got that story to get highlighted finally, and it hasn't stopped. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the Gosnell movie is trying to be made, and there's a project put together for crowdsourcing the funding that needs to be put into that. And if you're interested in that, there'll be a link on the screen somewhere that you can go to in order to help give.
Aaron, I want to just one more reminder, one more example before you change the story here.
Yeah.
Of the examples of Democrats from whom no one had to put any distance. Howard Dean, a few years ago, was remarking about the Republican National Committee. He said, "You think the RNC could get this many people of color in a single room? Only if they had the hotel staff in here."
Wow. Well,
because he thinks service positions are for minorities only. It's
right.
Not big fancy white people.
And that goes right to our vice president, who thinks that every Indian is working in a 7-Eleven somewhere in Maine or something, or Delaware. So it's absolutely ridiculous.
But to be fair to the vice president, he does think The Simpsons is real. So
that's true.
He thinks that's a real thing.
That's true. So, like I said before,
all the time.
Like I said before, I just want to mention one more thing about the Gosnell movie. Their funding is going really well. They're over halfway there. Activists should all come together and definitely try and help out and push them across the finish line so this movie can be made, so more people can know the true story about what happened there at the Gosnell Clinic. So I want to go ahead and take a quick break here for some commercials and to pay some bills, and we'll be right back on the other side with more. Thanks.
Another of the doctor's practices that defies explanation was his habit of cutting the feet of aborted fetuses and saving them in specimen jars in the clinic. Karima Cross showed the grand jury photographs that she had taken in 2008 of a closet where Gosnell stored jars containing severed feet. During the February 2010 raid, investigators were shocked to see a row of jars on a clinic shelf containing fetal parts. Ashley Baldwin testified that she saw about 30 such jars. None of the medical experts who testified before the grand jury had ever heard such a disturbing practice, nor could they come up with an explanation for it. The medical expert on abortions testified that cutting off the feet is bizarre and off the wall. The experts uniformly rejected, out of hand, Gosnell's supposed explanation that he was preserving the feet for DNA purposes should paternity ever become an issue. A small tissue sample would suffice to collect DNA. none of the staff knew of any instance in which fetal feet were ever used for this purpose.
Hi, welcome back to the Red State Weekly Briefing. Once again, I'm Caleb Howe. I'm here with Aaron Gardner, our engineer Thomas LeDuc, and of course our special guest Rafi Williams from the RNC. And we have been talking all kinds of stuff about Colorado. But right now, we're going to talk about something we saw in an email newsletter that a lot of you probably subscribe to. It's put out by Ben Domenech, and it's called The Transom. It's very much worth subscribing to. There's always good information in there. And in particular today, there was a really great segment. We have a post up at Red State written by Strife that highlights a particular paragraph from The Transom. And it is a response that Ben wrote to something that was written by Ezra Klein, who is a fake pundit. And he asked the smarmy and ignorant question, what's the liberal equivalent of climate denial? Climate denial. And Ben Domenech had an answer for him, and rather than sit here and talk about it, I'm just going to directly read it to you. Ben says, I assume by climate denial, Klein means an example where the bulk of real-world data, history, and experience indicate one thing, and liberals either deny its accuracy or say we ought to ignore it in order to pursue some higher aim via the policies they support. Perhaps one or two things may come to mind, such as the economic effects of the minimum wage, the gender wage gap, gun control and crime, the relationship of marriage to poverty, the population bomb and resource exhaustion, the environmental impact of fracking, the ramifications of welfare reform, the effect of public housing, the impact of teachers' unions on government schools, the crisis of public pensions, homeschooling, the safety record of nuclear power, any instance ever of voter fraud, the effectiveness of mandates, the Laffer curve, the Ron curve, money as a solution for problems in K-12 education, the consequences of affirmative action, the price impact of higher education subsidies, the possibility that torture can produce accurate information, Paul Ryan, Charles Murray, Margaret Sanger, free trade, the permanence of the Soviet Union, the social justice of Latin American communism, the nuclear-free zone, the coming ice age, recycling, GMOs, the price system, how supply and demand works, the broken window fallacy, the fact that boys and girls are biologically different, the point where human life begins, and, of course, Christianity. You know, just to name a few.
Covered 3 or 4.
Just a couple of things.
I think this is great. I love Ben Domenech. I think he's one of our stars in the blogosphere as far as writing, and what he does with the Transom is just amazing. But his ability to have the credibility to call out people like Ezra Klein, not everybody has that, and Ben is definitely in that generation and with him, and has the ability to do things like this so eloquently as he's shown. And it is really amazing how often these leftist wonks, as they like to say, bring up these points, and they think they're really interesting and everything. But the reality is, and Caleb and I have discussed this a lot in the past. The reality is there's a myth about liberal.
We wonkily discussed it.
Yeah, we wonkily discussed it while gazing at our navels. There's this myth about liberals being wonks and being really intelligent and everything like that. And, a lot of them are book smart, but a lot of them have no clue. And what Caleb and I have noticed is that
they're book smart. We don't go for that book learning.
We don't go for that, no. You can have book smart, but have absolutely zero wisdom. And what it comes down to is these guys have basically rejected self-evident truth and use their book smart to spin a new reality that just doesn't exist in nature. So it's interesting to me how they go through and think they know.
Well, that's not the only. The myth of the liberal wonk. The myth of the liberal wonk is that they're out there discussing policy from some sort of innate sense of understanding or a deep deliberative reasoning that they've gone through. When in reality, what it is, it's just a simple way of organizing a bunch of talking points and repeating them to one another. It's like the way college kids are when they sit around at night and smoke pot in Colorado or elsewhere, I guess. It's the same. That's the same sort of thing that happens with the liberal wonks.
But look, okay. So do you guys see Upshot, that new New York Times redux of 538 blog? And this week they had those polls that came out, right? That said, it's actually much closer in Arkansas and Colorado than all the other polling says. And then you look, in the crosstabs, and it says they underpolled Republicans in every one of those states. Romney won in the polling; he lost, compared to Obama. And to think that poll has any it's such an outlier, but all the liberals are, oh, look, we've got this new data, we're all so right, and blah, blah, blah,
That's right.
It's just trash to convince themselves to believe what they want to believe, and to provide some fake proof towards that, and they do it time and time again, and it's the thing that we got to push back against, and we got to go, that's not the truth here. Go to the real clear averages. Right. They're so far away.
And they contradict themselves. I was talking to LeDuc's favorite person, Tommy Christopher, earlier this week. I was debating him, and I sent him a video from Kira over at IJ Review, Kira Davis. She put up a video talking about what Clive Bundy had to say, and she said, the title of the video was From a Black Conservative's Perspective. And he had just been talking about how, well, the authenticity of having that people on the left have more authenticity to talk about race because that's who is the home party for minorities. The Democrats are the home party, so there's more authenticity there because they understand the black experience in a way that Republicans and conservatives can't understand it. And I said, well, here's a black conservative. And he said, pass. And I said, wait, so her authenticity doesn't count? She doesn't understand the black experience as well as you do? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well,
but then he had a heart attack on Twitter, and it was all
moronic. It's not
ridiculous.
We saw
this. Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely moronic. And we saw this a few weeks ago with Rafi, and I can't remember her name, from Ebony Magazine or whatever it was. Who basically discounted your opinion because she thought you were white, which and then when it was shown that you were black, there were people questioning, well, is he really black? He's not really black, and it's ridiculous that they get away with it.
And I think that's, again, though, that story ended up percolating through the conservative blogosphere until the point where the mainstream media had to cover it. It ended up being on the Washington Post, I was on MSNBC because of it. But again, it's thanks to guys like you who are out there pushing this narrative and making sure people are informed. Because the mainstream media is not informing people. It's the bottom line.
That's right.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad that we could all work together to get a win on that sort of thing, and hopefully we can do a lot more of that in the future as we move along. So now we're kind of coming to the conclusion here on, on the show. Caleb's got a special segment.
We got the 4 questions here. This is sort of based off of a late-night routine called 5 questions, but mine is 4 questions, so as you can see, there's no copyright problem. Now, when we have a special guest on, I'm going to ask 4 questions.
Intellectual property is for suckers.
Each one without looking anything up online. And then at the end, we're going to give you a score. So are you ready for your 4 questions? Question number 1. My brother, Benjamin Howe, was supposed to be here today, but he could not make it. So I'm going to read his question as the first question. So, if I may be so fat and bald for a minute, do you watch House of Cards? And if so, which character are you?
I do watch House of Cards, and if I had to pick a character, I'd probably go with the Veep's comms director, the new guy they brought on the 2nd season.
Oh, good try, but I'm sorry. The correct answer was I play myself in a future episode.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, that was the right answer. All right. Okay. Now I'm ready.
All right, question number 2. You are a keen observer of the political goings-on and doings in this country, and not merely as a function of your job, but as your own person. As someone who keeps their eye on the pulse and their finger on the ball, why aren't there enough people following me on Twitter? Seriously, what is the deal with that?
Because I haven't given you a Follow Friday yet. That's what it is.
That's what it is. All right. I will accept that answer. The other answer that we would have accepted was I'm too pretty. And it intimidates
You intimidate people too much. It's like that scene. Do you ever watch Game of Thrones?
I do not watch Game of Thrones. I don't get HBO. So.
Well, there's somebody who got killed in one episode because she was too pretty and somebody was jealous. So.
That's basically exactly it. That's the same exact thing.
Yeah. So it's a Twitter for you, though.
Question 3. As you know, people on the right, as we just discussed, who oppose the sweeping changes to our economy that are offered by, the Greens, are often called climate deniers. If you had to be one kind of denier besides climate, what kind of denier would you be?
Oh, man. I would probably be a denier of Obama's greatness. Don't buy into it.
That is excellent. We will accept that. We also would have taken podcast denier because you will almost certainly be denying having been on this show. So.
Oh, man. After the way it's gone, I'm not sure I want to see this.
That's right. And our fourth and final question is, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? And before you answer, keep this in mind, the swallow is super depressed about American Idol.
I'm going to go with 30.5 miles per hour.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. It was 30.45.
Ooh. You're
So
stealing
also-
that one. Like a half point on that? And
Also-
You got two half points, so you got a 1 out of 4.
No, that's a 5 out of 4. You're mistaken. You're counting like the liberal wonks do.
That is
Excuse
how
me.
I do it. That's how I score it.
Excuse me, I need to interject here. The actual correct response to that question is to ask whether it's European or African.
Ah. Well, which
I'm
one
sorry,
are we talking
that
about,
was
Caleb?
a misleading distinction.
Yes.
That's from
That's
British
a,
propaganda.
Yes, Monty Python reference there. Just so you know.
That's
So,
all
all
four
right,
of my
that-
questions.
That was the 4 questions with Caleb Howe. Rafi, I think you survived pretty well. What was his final score, Caleb?
I gave him a half point for number 2, a half point for number 3. That counts as 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4.
Wait, no. I get a full point for those, so that's 2, and then a half point for the last one, so that I'm getting like 3.5. I'll count.
All right, we'll call it 2.75.
All right, I'll take it.
2.75.
2.75. That's more than half.
I won't be beat. I don't know who's coming on, but they're going to lose to me. I promise that. Call it.
That's excellent. Well, hey, Rafi, I just want to really thank you for coming on and being our first guest on our show, on our new show. And I just want to thank you also for being a good press secretary for the GOP and helping us out and helping bloggers out. And
I want to thank you guys.
being available.
I couldn't do what I do without you guys. You guys do the hard work. I just, try to give you a little bit of information. You guys are doing the hard work, the writing. I couldn't do it all. And, I think that the RNC really has put a focus on conservatives and understanding their value now. We're trying to help you guys out in any way. And anybody wants to reach out to me on Twitter, feel free. I'm always there to chat it up and help you guys any way I can. So let's keep up a good fight.
Speaking of Twitter, go ahead and let us know where we can reach you on Twitter, Facebook, and any other place you feel like divulging.
It's at Raffi Williams, RAFFI Williams on Twitter. Just search Raffi Williams on Facebook, and everybody can feel free to email me, rwilliams@gop.com. I'm always there to help you guys, anything I can do.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Rafi, once again.
And also, you can see him on this season's Dancing with the Stars.
Yes,
Where I
exactly.
take on the gold. Oops, I'm not supposed to say that yet.
All right. So thanks again for coming out and seeing us. Caleb, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can see you?
Are we not going to do the part where LeDuc sings, "Did you ever know you're my hero"? I thought that was on the schedule. No? Okay, well, in that case.
That's private later tonight.
All right. I'm on Twitter at Caleb Howe and on Facebook at Caleb Howe. So,
Thomas.
CT Howe. CT Howe.
LeDuc.
Irish Duke 2 on Twitter and LeDuc at FTRradio.com.
Awesome. And also, everyone should know that this video show will be also running as a podcast on FTR Radio throughout the week. So if you miss it on Sunday or you don't have time to watch, but
Right. In other words, if you're not here, here's instructions on how you can listen to the podcast.
Yes, you can get the podcast through iTunes or at FTR Radio. So I just want to let everybody know that. My name is Aaron Gardner. I'm the host of the Red State Weekly Briefing and managing editor of RedState.com. You can find me at Aaron_RS on Twitter. Until next week, we'll see you.
I was blown away. I had a great time. I was energized.
It was awesome.
Very enlightening. Lots of informative speakers.
Bobby Jindal was great. Rick Perry was great.
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz.
I thought it was wonderful. As a matter of fact, I always meet the most interesting people, not just the speakers, but the other attendees.
This is my first time at Red State. Overwhelming. The information and knowledge that you can gain, and the networking. The networking was phenomenal.
I loved it. I thought this was the best one I've ever been to. The whole thing was really great.
This is our first time at the gathering, and we had a great time. I liked Senator Scott, Tim Scott from South Carolina. He was great. He opened the show yesterday morning. It was fantastic.
Favorite part, of course, is the people. It's just an amazing. I'm meeting people from California, Portland, Oregon. I mean, the entire country seems to be covered by this conference.
There are people who not only believe in the country, but can articulate it in a sensible, intelligent way.
It's awfully hard for one person to do much, but when you get in a group such as this where everyone has a common cause, it's easier to work together.
We need more Mike Lees. We need more Ted Cruzes. We need people that, that are willing to stand up.
I'd encourage folks out there, if you've not been to one of these conferences, come out to the next one. You'll have a great time, and most importantly, meet other people here, great speakers, but meet other people just like you who believe in limited government, who believe in freedom, and who believe America's best days are ahead of us.